Hello, you're watching France 24. It's 7 a.m. here in Paris. Let's get you up to date with our latest headlines. 4 officers dead and 7 wounded after snipers target the police at a protest in Texas. A demonstration in response to the deaths of 2 black men by police within 24 hours of each other this week. NATO's 28 members meet in Poland, top of the agenda, squaring up to an increasingly aggressive Russia under President Putin. It's been dubbed the most important summit since the Cold War. And France smashes through to the Euro finals with a 2-0 victory over Germany. A heroic night for Antoine Griezmann, whose team will face Portugal in the last match of the tournament on Sunday. Hello to you. This is today's Live from Paris. I'm Belle Lupton. Coming up on the programme, in business, the City of London's future hangs in the balance after last month's Brexit vote. Politicians may be trying to rally confidence, but financial experts paint a rather more pessimistic picture of life after the single market. And in focus, we'll be finding out why Poland, which is hosting a NATO summit that's about to start, has gone from being Russia's friend to its fiercest critic. Thanks for being with us here on France 24. And we begin the programme with news that's been coming in over the last couple of hours from Dallas, where at least 4 police officers have been killed and 7 others seriously wounded by what the police chief there is calling a sniper attack. The shots are said to have been fired from an elevated position above a demonstration that was taking place in the streets below. Those images coming to us live now. You can see them on your screens. The protest that was going on where that attack was happening was over the deaths of 2 black men shot to death by police within a day of each other earlier this week. Police say 1 man is in custody after being involved in a shootout with Dallas's SWAT team. They also say they've secured a suspicious package that was found near him. A second man, whose picture had been circulated by Dallas police, has turned himself in. There's no suggestion at the moment that he may or may not be a suspect. To remind you, of course, Philando Castile was shot to death in his car in Minnesota on Wednesday, less than a day after Alton Sterling's death in Louisiana, both of those by police. Our US correspondent Gallagher Fennick is in the US Capitol.
Still quite a bit of confusion at this point, notably because Dallas police have been circulating the picture of a young black male wearing a camouflage military-style T-shirt with a weapon slung around his shoulder. There's some confusion as to whether or not he actually is one of the shooters, but that person, again, this according to a statement just issued minutes ago by the Dallas Police Department, has turned himself in. In that same statement, Dallas Police saying that they have another alleged suspect in custody, and a suspicious device was found at the location where that person was apprehended. Remember that a little bit earlier, the chief of Dallas police was saying that there were bomb threats. Bomb threats had been issued, which is why they were calling various different agencies, notably ATF and other squads, bomb squads, to secure the location and try to find perhaps suspicious-looking packages and determine whether or not there was danger there. The numbers are chilling. At this point, there are reports of 4 officers dead, so that death toll has been climbing. It was at 3 a little bit earlier, but now police have confirmed a 4th officer dead. We're still talking of about in between 10, 11, depending on the sources, other officers injured. Again, according to police, there were at least 2 suspects described as snipers who were shooting, and I quote, from elevated positions at police officers who were on the ground, basically securing a protest with a strong presence of members of the Black Lives Matter movement, because remember this protest, and we're seeing similar scenes, not the shootings, but protests all over the nation, including here in Washington, D.C., following the killing of two young black men by police officers in the space of about 48 hours. So a lot of tension. That situation in Dallas still a very fluid, ongoing one, difficult to verify information, but there are several officers down, that's for sure, and people, including authorities, obviously on high alert out there at this point.
Our correspondent Gallagher Fennick in Washington there. And as we've heard, a video was released of that second shooting by the victim, Philando Castile's girlfriend. Catherine Clifford explains.
The officer just shot him in his arm.
Viewed over 3 million times on Facebook, Philando Castile's girlfriend live-streamed the moment he lay dying after being shot by police.
I
told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
The young daughter was also in the car.
How can one man put his hands in the air and reach for identification at the same time as he is telling you that he is armed? They did not check for pulse on the scene of the crime. They did not make sure that he was breathing. They instantly rushed their colleague off to the side where they comforted him.
Keep him up!
After being asked to exit the car with her hands up, Reynolds was handcuffed and detained. She said police tried to wipe away traces of the video from her phone and separated her from her daughter. The governor of Minnesota described the way she was treated as appalling and spoke out on the racist nature of the shooting.
Would this have happened if those passengers, the driver and the passenger, were white? I don't think it would have.
Soon after, the U.S. president echoed his words.
There's a big chunk of our fellow citizenry that feels as if, because of the color of their skin, they are not being treated the same. And that hurts. And that should trouble all of us.
An investigation is underway, and the officer involved has been put on paid leave. It's the second fatal police shooting in the U.S. in just 2 days. The Justice Department has opened a civil rights investigation into the killing of Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge and says it stands ready to assist the Minnesota investigation. In both cases, mobile phone footage of the killings roused public anger.
That report from Catherine Clifford, and of course we'll be bringing you all the latest on that unfolding story in Dallas as we get it. But for now, let's move on. Poland's capital is under tight security ahead of a NATO summit that's due to start in the coming hours. Leaders of the 28 member countries are in Warsaw for a meeting that takes place once every 2 years. This time, their priorities will be on how to deal with an increasingly assertive Russia under Putin and the fallout after the UK's vote to leave the EU last month. Well, let's cross live now to Warsaw, where our correspondent Gulliver Cragg is standing by. And Gulliver, can you just take us through what's on the cards at the meeting later today?
Well, the main thing that has been decided has actually already been quite widely publicised, which is that there is going to be a deployment of 4 NATO battalions to Poland and the Baltic states, Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia. This is something that these countries have been asking for some time, for NATO troops to be stationed on their soil to provide a greater deterrent to Russia. There are going to be 4 battalions of around 1,000 troops each. The one in Poland is going to be led by the United States. Germany, Canada and the United Kingdom are going to lead the 3 other battalions in the Baltic states. It's not a permanent, strictly speaking, deployment. It's called permanent rotation, which means that there won't be bases. The soldiers won't be moving here with their families, but the presence will actually be permanent, because as one rotation ends, another rotation will start again. It's not a very big force compared to the troop numbers that Russia has in its nearby Kaliningrad exclave, for example, but NATO is describing it as a tripwire. It means in a very concrete way that any attack on any of these countries will automatically and immediately be an attack on NATO forces.
So does this mean that everyone's happy with that deal? Is this now a done deal?
Well, I think NATO very much wants to present this summit as a success because of the fact that it comes at a moment of great crisis for the West as a bloc, mainly because of Britain's decision to leave the European Union. We can be sure that that will also be discussed here. Barack Obama and David Cameron are both present here in Warsaw. It also happens, this summit, at a time of tension between Poland and its partners in Europe and the United States. The new Polish government has been very much criticized for what Europe describes as a worrying lack of respect for democratic institutions. It's hobbled the Constitutional Court and taken control over the state media. It's been very much criticized for that. And surprisingly, it is on the agenda for Barack Obama's meeting with his Polish counterpart, Andrzej Duda, this morning. Despite the fact that this is a NATO summit, not a bilateral US-Poland meeting, the United States clearly sees these worries about Polish democracy as sufficiently important for them to be brought up at this meeting. As the New York Times underlined in its editorial, after all, NATO is about defending Western values, i.e. democracy, as much as anything else. And therefore, it's important that that should also remain clearly on the agenda.
Gulliver, thank you very much for that update from Warsaw, where that NATO summit is about to begin. To the UK now, and the leadership contest may not be over yet, but we already know the UK's next Prime Minister will be a woman. Justice Minister Michael Gove was eliminated in the second round of voting by the Conservative Party, leaving just the Home Secretary and her Eurosceptic rival in the running, both of them women. Laurent Berstecker explains.
The next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom will be a woman. After Justice Minister Michael Gove was edged out in a second round of voting Thursday, only two candidates remain in the race to succeed David Cameron: Interior Minister Theresa May and Energy Minister Andrea Leadsom. May, who won 199 out of 329 votes, remains the favourite to take the head of Britain's Conservative Party, and her best asset remains her experience.
To negotiate the best deal for leaving the European Union, to unite our party and our country, and to make Britain a country that works not for the privileged few, but for everyone. Yeah. Those are the things that my colleagues have voted in such numbers for today.
A political newcomer, Andrea Leadsom was relatively unknown before she sided with the Leave campaign and appeared in several televised debates about the EU referendum. She trailed far behind her rival with only 84 votes on Thursday, but could still have an ace or two up her sleeve. As opposed to May, who wanted to remain, Leadsom has been a fierce supporter of Brexit from the start, arguing it would enable the UK to renew with economic prosperity.
I want to speak to the markets as well as to the nation. No one needs to fear our decision to leave the EU.
Let's banish the pessimists.
Around 150,000 Conservative Party members must now choose between these two candidates, with the result due to be announced on September 9th. A clash of style and ideas to decide who will become the country's first woman Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher.
Time for a look at some other world stories we've got our eye on here at France 24. The US State Department says it'll reopen its internal investigation into whether Hillary Clinton's use of a private email account while Secretary of State compromised her handling of classified material. This comes a day after the Justice Department decided to follow the FBI's conclusion that no charges should be brought against Clinton. The number of injured in an explosion on a commuter train in Taiwan's capital has risen to 24, with some of those victims in a critical condition. Taiwanese police say they suspect the blast was caused deliberately by an explosive, and they've launched an investigation. And latest projections in Australia suggest the Conservative Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is likely to clinch a narrow victory in a vote that's still being counted almost a week after the election was held. His opponent Bill Shorten hasn't conceded victory, though. Australia has seen a revolving door of prime ministers, with leaders removed at the ballot box and via internal party coups. Now, it's been a night of celebration here in France. Tens of thousands of people descending on the streets of the capital, cheering, car horns sounding all night, and it's all in jubilation over France's victory over Germany in the semi-finals of the Euro 2016 football championships. That match down in Marseille ended 2-0 to France, with Antoine Griezmann scoring both French goals. Elliot Richardson has been in with the fans in central Paris all night, and he sent this report.
Victory for France in Marseille. Elation in the capital. French fans descended on the Champs-Élysées in their thousands in the early hours of Friday morning after Didier Deschamps' men secured their passage to the final.
It's been crazy. It's been wild on the Champs-Élysées. People out in the street, fireworks, everybody flares. It's been great. It's been wonderful. Everybody's out in the streets together.
It was great. It's revenge for us because we lost to them in the World Cup in the last major competition. They ruled tonight. The French team was extraordinary. It was perfect.
We win this competition. So I think there is no reason that France doesn't win. And we are going to win the Euro Cup!
The hosts were beaten 1-0 by Germany in the World Cup quarter-finals 2 years ago, but Les Bleus gained revenge as they booked a place in the Euro final for the first time in 16 years. Winners in 1984 and 2000, France will become the joint most successful side in Euros history alongside Germany and Spain if they triumph in the final. Portugal now await France at the Stade de France on Sunday.
Elliot Richardson reporting there. It's 7:15 here in the French capital. Let's remind you of our headlines. 4 officers dead and 7 wounded after snipers target the police at a protest in Texas. That demonstration in response to the deaths of 2 black men by police within 24 hours of each other earlier this week. And NATO's 28 members meet in Poland, top of the agenda, squaring up to an increasingly aggressive Russia under President Putin. It's been dubbed the most important summit since the Cold War. Time now for business, and we're starting with the UK. After the shock of last week's Brexit vote, the future of London as the world's financial capital has been thrown into doubt. Businesses are holding off on deals in the future in the face of uncertainty. And ahead of Brexit negotiations, many financial experts say the City of London may never recover from the consequences of leaving the single market. Rudaba Abbas has more.
British Chancellor George Osborne is holding talks with the world's largest investment banks as the finance industry mulls its post-Brexit future. On Thursday, 6 banking giants said they would help to maintain London's status as the financial capital of the world.
Today we met and agreed that we would work together with a common aim to help London retain its position as the leading international financial centre.
But they fell short of promising to save jobs. The City of London district is home to some of the world's largest banks. In 2014, it accounted for 12% of the country's GDP. It employs 360,000 people, 11% of whom are from EU states. A third of euro currency trading is also done in it, but the Brexit has cast doubt over its future. On Wednesday, City of London's authorities urged the government to work with financial firms to preserve passporting rights. It's a system that allows financial firms licensed in the UK to operate with EU partners. But the Brexit could block access to single markets. That may encourage firms to move their headquarters from London, which could leave up to 10,000 jobs in jeopardy. Competing EU capitals, including Frankfurt, Dublin and Paris, aren't wasting any time in trying to entice London's banking businesses. On Wednesday, the French government offered to make its tax regime for expatriates the most favourable in Europe.
Let's take a look at the markets now. And things finishing up on Wall Street last night with US stocks swerving between gains and losses on Thursday. They wound up with a muddled finish as the price of oil plunged. And here's how the markets are trading in Asia today. Asian shares mostly down, with investors cautious due to that plunge in oil prices overnight. Concerns, of course, that tonight's rescheduled release of US inflation data might mean market volatility. Spain and Portugal could become the first ever Eurozone countries to be fined for breaking the EU's fiscal rules. The Commission began disciplinary procedures against the two for failing to rein in their deficits to the mandatory 3% of GDP. Portugal and Spain must now show they breached the rules because of exceptional economic circumstances. Otherwise, they could be fined up to 0.2% of their GDP. Let's have a listen.
The Commission concluded that Portugal did not correct its excessive deficit by the deadline of 2015 and that Spain is off track to correct it by the 2016 deadline. For various reasons, the windfall from higher growth and lower interest rates were not insufficiently used to reduce deficits and debt.
After a 7-year investigation, French prosecutors want telecoms giant France Télécom, now renamed Orange, to stand trial. That's over a wave of employee suicides between 2008 and 2009. 35 workers took their own lives. The CEO then, Didier Lombard, stepped down in light of that scandal. He faces charges of harassment, along with as many as 6 other executives. An Orange spokesman said the request for a trial was normal and does not assume a decision of guilt. Well, it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing the headlines here in France. There's no surprises here, really. The French papers are ecstatic about beating Germany 2-0 in the Euro Semi-Cup final last night, aren't they, Flo? That's all that's going on.
That's all I'm going to talk to you about this morning is football. So if you're not interested in football, go make yourself a coffee or something like that.
Turn away now.
Here we go. Let's start with L'Équipe, the sports daily. They really sum things up. L'Extase, pure ecstasy. It certainly was a very exciting game. You can see some serious celebrating going on. What's interesting is papers are celebrating as if France won the whole Euro Cup, really. But it was a difficult game. Germany was quite the opponent. Le Parisien, slight play on words this morning. Mais quel pied, what a foot. But that's an expression in French. It means what an amazing game. Well done. We really deserved this victory. Germany, our bête noire, really dominated the game at first, but we rose to the occasion, says Le Parisien, and we're heading to the final against Portugal on Sunday. It's almost as if the worst is behind us.
And it really was an exciting game, wasn't it? Some papers are reporting on the atmosphere in Marseille.
That's right. The Vélodrome, that's the stadium, was in en fusion, it went into nuclear meltdown. Those are the words of Aujourd'hui en France, Le Parisien. Fans were vibrating in unison with Les Bleus, cheering them on, giving them energy. You can see some fun photos there of people cheering on. It's as if the stadium was the 12th man on the pitch, says Aujourd'hui en France. It played a very important role in bringing the team to victory.
And, of course, the real hero of the night was striker Antoine Griezmann. It's thanks to his 2 goals that France is still in the competition at all.
That's right. He certainly is the man of the hour today, on the front page of several papers. Check him out here on the front page of Libération, celebrating his goal there. Griezmann brought down Germany almost single-handedly, according to several papers. He's on the front page of Le Figaro as well. Griezmann sends France into the final, and 20 Minutes has a great pun today. They talk about grisant. Now, that's a word in French as well. It means exhilarating, heady, intoxicating, but it's usually spelled with an S. And you can see they've gone for the slight change of spelling there to a kind of homage to Griezmann.
A nice pun on that one. And he really did play a very good match yesterday. His 2 goals bring him up to a total of 6, and they make him the best striker in the Euros so far.
That's right. If we go back to 20 Minutes, they talk about Griezmann, le grand bleu. Remember that film back in the day? Well, they're saying that he is the great bleu. Coach Didier Deschamps said he really wanted the French team to make history, and 20 Minutes says, well, the French team has started a new chapter, and the first name on this blank page will be Antoine Griezmann. Now, Griezmann, a true gentleman, said that the victory was a group effort, and Aujourd'hui en France agrees with this analysis. They say the collective was up to the challenge, and you can see here the players from the team there. Lots of strikers came down to defend. That was one of the interesting aspects of last night's match, and the keeper, Hugo Lloris, he really made some incredible saves, and he gets a lot of attention today. In Le Figaro, the captain, Hugo Lloris, he really weathered the storm, sailed the French ship through this incredible storm that was that game last night, and kept the score at 2-0, even though Germany really tried hard to score.
But it's not all adoration. There are some critics who are saying that first goal certainly wasn't deserved. Griezmann scored a penalty after a dubious handball.
That's right. Now, several papers have come out to defend the referee. Among them is Aujourd'hui en France. In this article, they come to the defense of the Italian referee Nicola Rizzoli. If you look at the slow-mo replay, you can clearly see...
Which I'm sure we've all done.
You can clearly see Bastian Schweinsteiger touching the ball with his hand. Yes, that penalty was deserved, according to Le Parisien. But it must be said that it seemed like even the French team was a little shocked to be able to play that penalty. This is a really hilarious article on the website of France TV Info. Apparently, Ryanair's community manager is among those that believe that France did not deserve that penalty. During the game, the Irish airline tweeted, wait a minute, so they don't know what a handball is in France, and tweeted the photo of Thierry Henry doing that very famous handball during the game against Ireland in 2009, which stopped Ireland from going to the World Cup and made France go to the World Cup. And the hashtag on that was never forget. That tweet, it must be said, was removed. And the next tweet by Ryanair was a poster for an advertisement, actually, saying that they were looking for a new community manager.
Gosh, well, the French papers are also focusing on what's expected next, the hotly anticipated final against Portugal in Paris on Sunday.
That's right. It's a big game for Portugal as well. Let's not forget that. La Croix is focusing on what this means for Portugal. Portugal's tireless quest for a title. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. I guess that's how you could describe Portugal. They've often made it into the final rounds of matches, but they've never won a major title. In fact, Portugal still has a very bitter taste in their mouth from losing the Euro Cup on home turf. Remember, that was back in 2004 against Greece. So this is their chance for revenge. But let's not forget also Allez les Bleus.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll be cheering them on Sunday. Flo, thank you very much for that press review from the French papers there. And that's it from us for this half of the programme. But I'll be back after the break with more news. And in focus, we'll be finding out why Poland, which is hosting that NATO summit we talked about, has gone from being Russia's friend to its fiercest critic. Do stay with us.